Charity case table is by the kitchen. Nora, my mother said it without raising her voice, which somehow made it worse. We were standing under the gold lights of the Harbor House Ballroom, 2 feet from a seating chart printed on cream card stock, while 280 hospital donors walked past us in tuxedos and silk dresses. I was 22 years old, wearing a navy dress I had steamed in my apartment bathroom because I did not own an iron. My sister Vivian's name was printed across the stage behind us in letters, tall enough to read from the street, Dr. Vivian Keane, Future of Pediatric Care. Mine was written in pencil on a clipboard by the service corridor. My father looked at my dress, then at the donor line forming near the champagne table. "Just be useful tonight," he said. "Do not make this about you." What neither of them knew was that the hospital's biggest donation of the night, $3.2 million, could not legally move without my signature. Not Vivian's, not my father's. Mine. And the contract proving that was folded inside the flat black purse my mother had just told me to hide under the table. Before I tell you how a hospital gala turned into an audit, take a second to hit like and subscribe if this kind of family story hits close to home. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I always want to know where people are listening from. Now let me take you back to the first time my parents decided I was easier to manage when I was invisible. My name is Nora Keane. I grew up in Portland, Maine, in a gray house on Monjoy Hill with white trim, hydrangeas by the porch, and a framed newspaper article in the front hallway about my father saving a hospital foundation from bankruptcy. My father, Charles Keane, was not a doctor. He liked people to assume he was. He chaired the board of St. Bridget Children's Hospital Foundation and knew exactly how to stand beside surgeons in photographs, so the caption did not need to clarify the difference. My mother, Ingrid, planned charity luncheons with the focus of a military commander. She remembered donors' allergies, wives' maiden names, and which local judge preferred bourbon to wine. My sister Vivian was 5 years older than me and had the kind of discipline adults love to reward. Perfect grades, perfect posture, perfect answers at dinner. She became a pediatric resident at St. Bridget and walked through the same hospital lobby where our father shook hands with donors, except she wore a white coat and he wore a lapel pin. I was the softer problem. When I was 9, I started having panic attacks at school. Not dramatic ones. Mine looked like stomach aches, shaking hands, bathroom trips, missed spelling tests, and a teacher calling my mother at work because I had spent 20 minutes under a desk with my palms over my ears. A specialist called it severe anxiety with sensory overload. My parents called it another appointment. Vivian had violin, advanced math, sailing camp, and later sat tutoring. I had intake forms, laminated coping cards, and the quiet instruction not to embarrass the family. "You are lucky we can afford this," my mother told me once in the parking lot of a therapist's office. I was 11, picking at the edge of the paper bracelet they made me wear after every appointment. Other children would not get this much help. I believed her. I believed I was expensive. I believed every meal, every ride, every school form signed in blue ink was proof of debt. The only adult who never made me feel like a bill was my grandmother, Maeve Keane. She was my father's mother, but she never treated him like the main character in the family. Maeve had run a small motel near Bar Harbor for 38 years before selling it to a developer who wanted the land more than the building. She wore men's flannel shirts, kept receipts in cigar boxes, and tipped waitresses in cash folded under her water glass. Every other Saturday, she took me to the hospital cafeteria and bought me a blueberry muffin. Not the bakery kind with sugar on top. The dry hospital kind wrapped in plastic. She said hospital muffins told the truth about life because they looked better than they tasted but still got you through the morning. Maeve was the first person who noticed where parents slept when their children were admitted to St. Bridget. Not in rooms, not most of them. They slept in vinyl chairs, minivans, lobby corners, or the cheap motel off Congress Street with the flickering green sign. She noticed because she was the kind of woman who noticed housekeeping carts and tired fathers buying coffee at 2 in the morning. When I was 15, my little cousin Theo spent 6 weeks in St. Bridget after a bone marrow transplant. His mother, my Aunt Liza, slept upright beside his bed until her ankles swelled. My uncle drove back and forth from Bangor for work because they could not afford a hotel. Maeve started showing up with grocery bags, socks, instant oatmeal, parking vouchers, quarters for laundry. My father called it sweet. Maeve called it a system failure. That summer, I helped her make a spreadsheet. Nothing fancy, family name, child's unit, hometown, number of nights, transportation needs, food allergies, who had other kids at home. Maeve dictated and I typed. I liked spreadsheets because the boxers stayed where I put them. They did not sigh when I needed a minute. By the time Theo went home, Maeve had paid for 17 motel nights for 3 different families she had met by the elevators. She did not post about it. She did not ask the hospital for a plaque. She did ask my father one direct question at Sunday dinner. Charlie, why does your foundation raise millions and still let parents sleep in chairs? My father set down his fork. Mother, restricted clinical funding is more complicated than handing out motel keys. Then make it less complicated. Vivian, who was home from college that weekend, smiled into her water glass. Grandma, Dad knows what he is doing. Maeve looked at me, not Vivian. Nora knows what families need. She listens. The table shifted after that, not in a loud way. My mother changed the subject to Vivian's summer research position. My father poured more wine. Vivian asked if anyone had seen her hospital ID badge, but I kept Maeve's sentence folded inside me for years. Nora knows what families need. No one in my house had ever said I knew anything useful. In high school, my parents learned to explain me efficiently. If I left a crowded room, I was sensitive. If I needed time before answering, I was shy. If I cried after someone snapped at me, I was dramatic. Vivian's hard edges were ambition. Mine were symptoms. At 16, I started volunteering at St. Bridget's Family Resource Desk on Saturday mornings. I made coffee, sorted, donated books, found phone chargers, printed bus routes, and showed parents where the shower on the oncology floor was hidden behind the linen closet. It was the first place where my habit of noticing small distress became useful. A father from Presque Isle came to the desk one morning holding a parking ticket and a receipt for 2 coffees. His son had been in surgery for 9 hours. He had $12 left until payday. The parking office wanted $28. I remember his hands, large, cracked at the knuckles, shaking hard enough that the receipt made a sound. I called Maeve. She arrived 40 minutes later in a red raincoat, paid the ticket, bought the man a sandwich, and asked me to write down exactly what happened. Not for gossip, for records. Stories make people cry, she told me on the drive home. Records make them change rules. That became our private project. Family need reports, Maeve's phrase, not mine. Every month, I typed anonymous summaries for her. Travel distance, missed wages, lodging costs, parking, meals, childcare for siblings. My father thought I was helping Grandma with little charity notes. He never asked to read them. By senior year, Maeve had a binder 2 inches thick. Blue cover, white label, family care evidence, 2018 a 2021. When she got sick, she brought the binder to my apartment herself. I was 19 then, halfway through community college, working part-time in donor records at the hospital foundation. Vivian was in medical school. My parents had stopped pretending my path would impress anyone. They were polite about it when other people were listening and blunt when they were not. Nora has always needed a slower lane. My mother told a neighbor at a garden party, with me standing close enough to hear. We are proud that she found something manageable. Manageable meant $18 an hour entering donor addresses and scanning pledge forms in the basement office of St. Bridget's Foundation. Maeve came by one Friday afternoon in October with the blue binder wrapped in a grocery bag because it was raining. Her cancer had come back. She did not call it a battle. She hated that language. If this is a battle, she said, my pancreas forgot to attend basic training. We sat in my tiny kitchen while water dripped from her raincoat onto the floor. I signed something today, she said, a medical thing, a money thing. That was Maeve. No soft entry, no drama. She had created a donor-restricted gift agreement with St. Bridget Children's Hospital Foundation. $3.2 million from the sale of her motel land, directed into a new program called the Nora Keane Family Care Fund. Lodging, meals, transportation, sibling support, emergency grants for families with hospitalized children. The first half would transfer after her death. The second half would transfer only after the hospital proved the money had been used correctly for 1 year. Why are you telling me? I asked. Maeve slid a copy of the agreement across the table. It had yellow tabs along the side and her initials in the margins. Because I named you Program Steward. I stared at the page. The words lined up too neatly, like they belonged to someone else's life. Program Steward, Nora Keane. Grandma, I am 19. You are 19 and you have 3 years of records in that binder. Dad chairs the foundation, which is why he is not the steward. I remember the refrigerator humming. I remember a neighbor dragging trash bins across the alley. I remember Maeve's finger tapping paragraph 4.2. The second tranche requires your countersignature, she said. Not Charlie's, not Ingrid's, not Vivian's. Yours. He will be furious. He will be charming first, then furious. I almost laughed because she was right. Maeve squeezed my wrist. Her hand felt dry and light, like paper that had been folded many times. Listen to me. Your father loves the photograph of helping. He does not always love the work. That fund is for the work. She died 4 months later, in February, during a sleet storm that coated every parked car on our street in ice. My parents held the funeral at St. Matthew's because the windows photographed well. Vivian gave a polished reading from Ecclesiastes. My father spoke about legacy, service, and the power of community. I sat in the second pew with a tissue shredding in my hand and the donor agreement folded in my coat pocket. The first $1.6 million transferred to St. Bridget that spring. For a while, the fund worked the way Maeve wanted. Motel vouchers, gas cards, meal stipends. A part-time family navigator named Carmen Ruiz, who knew every bus route in Cumberland County and could persuade a pharmacy manager to stay open 10 extra minutes for a parent whose child had just been discharged. I stayed in donor records. I tracked receipts, scanned grant approvals, and kept a quiet backup spreadsheet because Maeve had trained me not to trust systems that only one person could see. My father praised the fund in speeches. My mother hosted a Maeve's light luncheon with pale blue napkins and centerpieces made from hydrangeas. Vivian took photos with pediatric patients for the annual report. I was not in the pictures, which was fine at first. The families were getting help. I told myself that was the point. Then the expenses started changing. Not all at once. That would have been easier to challenge. First, the family navigator's hours were cut from 25 a week to 12 temporarily. Then motel vouchers needed director approval. Then a line item appeared for donor stewardship collateral. $8,000 for a video package, $12,000 for Gala photography, $36,000 for an outside branding consultant who described the family care fund as emotionally resonant naming architecture. I printed that invoice and stared at it for a long time. Carmen noticed she came down to donor records one Thursday with her lunch still in her hand, a foil-wrapped burrito she had not touched. They denied the Patel family lodging. She said, their baby is in NICU. They live 2 hours away. We have money. Who denied it? Development office. Said the fund is being reviewed ahead of the gala. The gala. Everything became ahead of the gala that year. St. Bridget was planning its largest fundraiser in a decade. A black tie event at Harbor House to announce Vivian's new pediatric innovation initiative. My sister was still a resident, not a department head, but my parents had learned to make potential sound like achievement. The fund Maeve built for parents sleeping in chairs was being folded into Vivian's public story. I requested an internal expense report. My supervisor, Dana, sent me a PDF and a warning. Nora, do not pick a fight with your father over coding categories. Ask questions through the right channel. The right channel was a hallway full of people who owed my father favors. So I called the lawyer listed on Maeve's gift agreement. His name was Grant Hollis, senior trust officer at Casco Bay Bank. He had silver hair, a voice like a locked drawer, and no interest in my family dynamics. Miss Keane, he said, after I explained the categories, the agreement is clear. The second transfer requires annual compliance documentation and your countersignature. Has anyone requested your review? No. Then no second transfer can be released. Can they rename the fund? I heard paper moving on his end. Not without written approval from the donor's estate representative and the program steward. That would be you on both practical counts for this fund. My father chairs the foundation. Your father signed the agreement as foundation representative. He did not sign as donor. I wrote that sentence on a sticky note and put it inside my desk drawer. 2 weeks before the gala, my mother invited me to brunch. That should have warned me. Ingrid Keane did not invite me to meals unless she needed my body in a chair for optics or my compliance for logistics. We met at a restaurant overlooking the harbor where every table had a tiny vase with one white tulip. My mother wore a camel coat and the expression she used when she had already forgiven herself. You are coming to the gala, she said. I work for the foundation. I assumed staff would be there. Not as staff. Exactly. Family should be present. I waited. She opened her leather folder and slid a document across the table. Your father needs you to sign a routine acknowledgement. Something about Grandma's fund. The lawyers are making everything so complicated. There it was. Page 4.2. Counter signature line. My name already typed below it. The title at the top was not Maeve Keane Family Care Fund Compliance Release. It was Program Transition Authorization, Keane Pediatric Innovation Fund. I read the first paragraph twice. They were not just requesting the second transfer. They were asking me to approve a name change and broaden the spending category to include donor engagement, clinical innovation promotion, branded educational materials, and strategic event development. Strategic event development meant gala costs. This is not routine, I said. My mother's mouth tightened. Please do not become theatrical. This changes the fund. It modernizes the language. Grandma wanted lodging and family support. Your grandmother wanted the Keane name associated with helping children. She wanted parents to stop sleeping in chairs. A waiter appeared to refill water. My mother waited until he left. Nora, your sister has worked very hard to put this family in a position where people listen. This initiative could raise 10 times what your grandmother donated. Then raise it without touching her restrictions. My mother's hand closed over the folder. You always do this. Do what? Find the one way to make generosity look ugly? I did not sign. My father called that night. He did not start with hello. Your mother tells me you are confused about the document. I understand it. Then you understand it is administrative. It renames the fund and expands the spending categories. Because we need flexibility. For gala expenses, he exhaled through his nose. I could picture him pinching the bridge of it in his study, the wall of framed donor photos behind him. You work in records, Nora. You see line items. You do not see strategy. Carmen is turning families away. Carmen is not responsible for institutional growth. Neither was Grandma. She was responsible for the gift agreement. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice had cooled. Do you know what Vivian was doing at your age? I looked at the stack of scanned grant receipts on my coffee table. Medical school applications. She was building a future. You are clinging to a binder because it makes you feel important. That hurt because part of me feared it was true. Maeve had trusted me, but maybe she had trusted a version of me I had not become. Maybe I was just a donor records clerk with anxiety and a folder full of highlighted pages. Then I looked at the sticky note from Grant Hollis on my fridge. Your father signed as foundation representative. He did not sign as donor. I'm not signing tonight, I said. Then bring the document to the gala. We will discuss it there like adults. Like adults meant near witnesses he could charm. The week before the gala, St. Bridget became a stage set. Florists pushed carts through the lobby. A videographer filmed Vivian walking past the pediatric mural with a stethoscope around her neck. My mother sent 3 emails about donor seating and 1 text to me, please wear something polished. Navy if possible. It photographs better than black. I bought a navy dress from a consignment shop on Forest Avenue. $28, good zipper. 1 loose thread at the sleeve. Carmen caught me in the supply room 2 days before the event. They are using Maeve's patient photos in the gala video. She said, do they have releases? Some, not all. And the script says Vivian created the family care model during residency. For a second, I forgot to breathe evenly. Not because Vivian was claiming credit for my volunteer work. That was almost expected. It was because Maeve's name had been moved from the center of the story to a tasteful footnote. Carmen handed me a flash drive. I copied the old program files before they locked the folder. You could get in trouble. So could they. That night, I sat on my apartment floor with my laptop, the blue binder Maeve's agreement, Carmen's flash drive, and a legal pad. I made a timeline. Original gift agreement. First transfer approved family support payments. Denied lodging requests. Branding invoices. Draft transition authorization. Gala video script. Emails using the phrase Vivian originated model. At 11:40 p.m., I sent the packet to Grant Hollis. At 6:12 the next morning, he replied, do not sign anything until we speak. I am notifying St. Bridget Compliance that the restricted gift is under review. Compliance had a name, Elise Park. She was the hospital's chief compliance officer, a former federal healthcare auditor with blunt bangs, square glasses, and a reputation for making surgeons apologize in writing. I had seen her twice in the cafeteria. I had never spoken to her. She called me at noon. Miss Keane, I reviewed the preliminary documents from Mr. Hollis. Okay, I need to ask a direct question. Did you authorize use of restricted family care funds for gala production costs? No. Did you authorize renaming the fund? No. Did you create the original family need reports? I looked at Maeve's binder on my desk. With my grandmother? Yes. Elise paused just long enough for me to hear a keyboard stop clicking. Bring your copy of the gift agreement to the gala, she said. Do not hand it to your father. Hand it to me. You're coming. I am now. The day of the gala, Rain started at 4 and did not stop. Not a dramatic storm. Just steady coastal rain that turned streets shiny and made everyone's hair behave badly. I took the bus because parking near Harbor House was $35 and my paycheck had not landed yet. By the time I reached the ballroom entrance, my dress hem was damp and my shoes made a faint squeak on the marble. My mother saw me before I saw her. Ingrid Keane had a gift for finding a flaw across any room. She crossed the foyer with a donor smile still attached to her face. Nora, your hair. It's raining. Everyone else managed. Behind her, the seating chart stood on an easel wrapped in eucalyptus. I searched for my name under K. Keane, Charles, and Ingrid. Kin, Dr. Fiviate, no, Nora. Where am I sitting? My mother glanced toward the service corridor. We had a late capacity adjustment. Meaning, that was when she said it. Charity case table is by the kitchen. Nora. She tried to make it sound like a joke. The kind people use when they want cruelty to have plausible deniability. My father arrived beside her, already scanning the donor line. Just be useful tonight. Do not make this about you. I touched the edge of my purse to make sure the folded agreement was still there. It was, I need to speak with Elise Park, I said. My father's eyes sharpened. Why? She asked me to bring something. My mother laughed once, softly. Nora. Compliance people ask for things because they enjoy feeling necessary. Then she will enjoy this. For the first time that night, my father looked directly at me. Not through me, at me. Do not embarrass Vivian. I almost told him Vivian had embarrassed herself by taking credit for a program she did not build. I did not. Maeve used to say that if you have records, you do not need rehearsal. The charity case table was not a table. It was 2 extra chairs near the AV booth with a linen napkin folded over one seat and a staff meal ticket on the other. From there, I could see the stage, the donor screens, and Vivian's profile in the green room doorway while a volunteer touched up her makeup. Carmen found me at 6:20. She wore a black staff blazer and carried a clipboard with 3 different pen colors clipped to the top. You okay? I'm sitting next to a speaker cable. Maeve would unplug it. That made me smile for the first time all day. Carmen leaned closer. Elise is here. Table 12, gray suit. She told me not to approach her unless someone tries to remove documents. That's specific. She is a specific person. At 7, the doors opened. Donors filled the ballroom in waves. Coastal money, hospital money, old family money that smelled like wool coats and expensive soap. My parents moved through them like synchronized swimmers. My father clapped shoulders. My mother guided conversations with one hand on someone's elbow. Vivian stood near the stage in a white dress under her doctor's coat, which was a choice. Even from across the room, I could see the embroidered name Fifian Kinham Day. She found me at 7:15. Mom said you were being difficult. She said, hi to you too. Vivian glanced at the AV booth. This seating is not personal. The head table is for honorees and major donors. I did not ask for the head table. You never ask. You just wait until everyone notices you were left out. That was Vivian's talent. She could make neglect sound like my strategy. I need you to tell the video team not to use the family footage without releases. I said. Her face did not move much, but her eyes changed. What footage, Theo? The Patel family. The early motel vouchers. That was Maeve's binder, not your residency project. The video is about continuity of care. Then say continuity. Don't say you created it. Vivian looked toward the stage where our father was laughing with a bank president. You have no idea what it takes to get people to fund things. I know what it takes for families to need them, because you handed out coffee for a few Saturdays for 6 years. She adjusted her white coat. Nora, tonight is bigger than your feelings. It is also bigger than your resume. Color rose in her face. For a second, she looked like the sister who used to slam bedroom doors when she got a 96 instead of 100. Then she recovered. Sign the authorization. She said, let Dad handle the adult part. No. Then do not be surprised when people treat you like the obstacle. She walked away before I could answer. At 7:40, my father sent a volunteer to summon me to the side hallway. Not asked, summon. The volunteer was 19, maybe 20, with a headset too large for her head and panic in her eyes. Mr. Keane needs you by the green room. My father stood outside the green room with my mother and a man from the foundation's outside counsel. Peter Wexler, who charged the hospital $600 an hour to use the phrase best practices in 3-page emails. Peter held the transition authorization on a clipboard. Nora, he said, too warmly. This is an administrative clarification. Your father's team tells me there is family confusion. There is not family confusion. There is a donor restriction. My mother's eyes flicked toward a passing waiter. Lower your voice. I had not raised it. Peter turned the clipboard toward me and offered a pen. Signing tonight allows the pledge announcement to proceed cleanly. We can revisit program language after the event. If the language is wrong, why announce it? My father stepped closer. Because 300 people are here. 280, I said automatically. He stared. I hated that I corrected him. It made me sound small, like a child winning on a technicality. But details were the only place I had ever been allowed to stand. Nora, he said, this family has carried you through every appointment, every school issue, every crisis. We have never asked you for anything that mattered. I am asking now. There it was, the ledger he kept in his head. Therapy sessions, quiet rooms, patience, all of it accruing interest. Grandma asked me to, I said. My mother's expression hardened. Your grandmother was sentimental near the end. I looked at her. She was exact near the end. Peter cleared his throat. Miss Keane, refusing to sign may jeopardize future patient services. Using restricted funds incorrectly will jeopardize them faster. I did not sign. At 8 o'clock. The program began. My father walked on stage to applause and the hospital logo glowing behind him. He thanked sponsors, surgeons, donors, volunteers, and the tireless women in my life. My mother placed a hand over her heart at the nearest table. Vivian smiled with her chin lowered and practiced humility. I sat by the AV booth with a staff meal ticket in my lap. The first video played, children waving, parents hugging, nurses, a slow piano track. Then Maeve appeared in an old photograph, standing beside me at the resource desk. Someone had cropped the image so only Maeve's hand and part of my shoulder remained. Vivian's voiceover filled the room. During my training, I saw that healing did not end at the bedside. Families needed lodging, meals, and dignity. That insight became the foundation of the Keane Pediatric Innovation Fund. Carmen, standing against the wall, closed her eyes. My father's speech followed. He described Vivian as the moral architect of a new era of family-centered pediatric care. He called my mother the engine behind tonight. Then he said Maeve had planted a seed that Vivian had transformed into a system. I could have survived all of that. I had survived versions of it for years. Then the live auction began, and my father brought me into it. Some of you know our younger daughter, Nora, he said from the stage. My mother turned in her chair. The spotlight operator hesitated, then found me by the AV booth. 280 faces turned toward the kitchen corridor. My father smiled like this was affectionate. Nora has had her own journey with St. Bridget. As a child, she needed more support than most. Our family learned compassion not from ease, but from caring for someone who required patience. I felt my hands go cold around the staff meal ticket. Tonight, he continued, we are proud to show how Vivian turned that family experience into a fund that will serve thousands. People clapped because they did not know what else to do with a sentence dressed up as tenderness. The auctioneer stepped forward. We opened the transformational pledge match at $1.6 million, unlocking the second half of the Keane family commitment. Unlocking. On the donor screen, the new name appeared. Keane Pediatric Innovation Fund. Under it, founded by the Keane family in honor of Dr. Vivian Keane, Maeve's name was gone. That was the line. Not my chair by the kitchen. Not the charity case comment. Not being edited out of a photograph. It was watching my grandmother's fund be turned into a branding platform in front of the families it was supposed to serve. I stood. My father kept smiling, but his eyes warned me not to move. I walked to table 12 and handed Elise Park the folded agreement. She opened it, checked the yellow tabs, and stood with me. I need to pause here for a second because this is the part where I almost sat back down. I had spent my whole life being trained to avoid scenes, to keep my voice low, to make my needs smaller than the room. If you have ever been called difficult for asking people to follow the rules they signed, comment the word signature below. Keep watching because the document in Elise Park's hand did not just stop a pledge, it exposed who had been using my grandmother's name. Elise did not rush. That is what I remember most. She buttoned her gray blazer, took the center aisle, and walked toward the stage like she was approaching a conference table. My father saw her before the audience did. The smile stayed. The color behind it changed. Elise, he said into the microphone, we are in the middle of a pledge moment, I know. She did not take the microphone from him. She took the second one from the stand near the auctioneer. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting the program. St. Bridget Compliance needs to clarify that the restricted gift currently displayed on screen is under active review and cannot be represented as released tonight. The auctioneer lowered his cards. My mother stood halfway, then sat when Peter Wexler touched her sleeve. My father laughed lightly. This is an internal timing issue. We can address it after the program. Elise looked at the screen. The fund name on display is not the name in the executed gift agreement. Now people started reading the screen instead of watching the stage. My father covered the microphone with his hand, but his voice still carried through the room. Do not do this here. Elise did not look at him. The executed name is the Maeve Keane Family Care Fund. The donor restriction limits use to lodging, meals, transportation, emergency family support, and related direct assistance. The agreement requires documented compliance and countersignature from the program steward before the second transfer can be released. Peter Wexler moved toward the stage steps. Elise, legally, this is not the forum. Legally, she said, it became the forum when restricted funds were solicited under a different name. I stayed at the edge of table 12 because my legs were not as steady as I wanted them to be. Carmen came to stand beside me. She did not touch me. She just stood there, close enough that I did not feel alone. A donor near the front, Mrs. Albright, raised her hand as if this were a luncheon Q&A. Who is the program steward? My father answered before Elise could. A family designee, administrative only. Elise turned and looked down the aisle at me. Nora Keane. This time the faces turned slower, not because of spectacle, because recalculation takes a moment. Mrs. Albright followed the line of Elise's gaze to where I stood in a damp dress by the back tables. The young woman by the sound booth. Yes, Elise said. My father brought the microphone back to his mouth. Nora assists with records. My late mother included her ceremonially. I heard Maeve in my head, charming first, then furious. Grant Hollis entered through the side doors at 8:27 p.m. He wore a dark suit, no overcoat despite the rain, and carried a hard-sided document case. I had not known he was coming. Later he told me Elise asked him to wait in the lobby unless the pledge was publicly represented as released. My father saw him and stopped speaking. Grant walked to the stage steps, nodded to Elise, and faced the audience. I am Grant Hollis with Casco Bay Bank, trustee liaison for the Maeve Keane donor restricted gift. For accuracy, the second transfer has not been released. It cannot be released without Ms. Nora Keane's countersignature. No countersignature has been provided. Mrs. Albright leaned back in her chair. A man from the hospital board whispered something to his wife. The auction cards in the front row stayed on laps. Vivian stood at the side of the stage very still. One hand closed around the edge of her white coat. My father stepped away from the podium and spoke to Grant without the microphone. This is a family matter. Grant's voice did not shift. It is a restricted charitable gift. That sentence did more damage than an accusation would have. It took the story out of my father's living room and placed it where Maeve had put it, in writing. Elise asked the AV team to remove the pledge graphic. The screen went dark blue. Someone near the back coughed. Silverware clicked. No one walked out. Not yet. They wanted to see which version of the Keane family would survive the next 5 minutes. My mother crossed the aisle toward me. Her face was smooth in the way ice is smooth. Give me the rest of what you have, she said. No. Nora, you do not understand what you are doing. I understand 4.2. Stop quoting numbers like they make you brave. They make me accurate. Her mouth opened, then closed. On stage, Elise was still speaking. Pending review, St. Bridget will freeze all expenses charged to the family care restriction after March 1st. Donor Services will issue corrected language to attendees by Monday. Any pledge made tonight in response to the restricted match will be held unprocessed until donors receive the corrected notice. The word freeze moved through the ballroom faster than any applause had. Vivian took the microphone then. I think she meant to rescue the night. She had been trained to perform under pressure, and for a second I could almost admire the reflex. I want to clarify something, she said. No one intended to disrespect my grandmother. The Innovation Fund was always meant to expand her vision. Mrs. Albright spoke again. Did you create the family care model? Vivian's lips parted. That was all. The pause was enough. Carmen reached into her clipboard and pulled out a printed page. She did not wave it. She walked it to Elise. Elise read it, then handed it to Grant. I knew the page. It was the first family need report Maeve and I created after Theo's transplant. July 2018. Typed by me at 15. Edited in Maeve's red pen. Elise looked at Vivian. The source materials predate your residency. Vivian's hand tightened on the microphone. I never claimed sole authorship. The Gala video script was still loaded on the teleprompter at the side of the stage. I could see the line from where I stood. During my training, I created a new model. My father took the microphone back too quickly. Enough. This is not a deposition. Elise looked at him. No, but there will be one if the preliminary review finds intentional misuse. That finally broke the room's patience. Not into shouting, into movement. Board members leaning toward each other, donors checking phones, hospital staff looking at the floor. The fantasy that this was a harmless family misunderstanding had expired. My father left the stage through the side exit. My mother followed him. Vivian stayed where she was for 3 more seconds, then set the microphone on the podium and walked after them without looking at me. The program did not resume. Harbor House staff served dessert because the kitchen had already plated it, and because life is strange that way, 280 people eating lemon tarts under a corrected pledge freeze. I stood by table 12 until Carmen took the staff meal ticket from my hand. "You are shredding it," she said. I looked down. The ticket had been twisted into a damp rope. Grant approached me first. "Ms. Keane, I will need your documents for formal review. Do I have to give originals?" "No. Copies are sufficient tonight. Keep the originals, Maeve would have liked him." Elise joined us. Up close, she looked less severe than tired. "You did the right thing," she said. I wanted that sentence to fix something. It did not. It landed gently and still left the bruise underneath. What happens now? Now we document. Then the board decides whether it cares about governance as much as it cares about photographs. Across the room, Mrs. Albright was speaking to 2 other donors. She glanced at me, not unkindly, and then looked at the blank screen where Maeve's name should have been. At 9:15, my father found me in the coat hallway. The coat hallway at Harbor House was narrow and smelled like wet wool. A teenager in a black vest was handing out umbrellas from a brass stand. My father waited until the volunteer moved away. "You humiliated your sister." I held my purse with both hands. Vivian humiliated herself when she let them say she created Grandma's program. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No." "Then what was the point?" "The point was keeping the fund legal." He laughed once, a hard, quiet sound. "Legal? You have been waiting your whole life for a word that lets you punish us." For years, I would have rushed to deny it. I would have explained my heart, my intentions, my gratitude, my fear. That night, I did something smaller. I took Maeve's agreement from my purse and opened the last page. "Read her note." He looked at the page but did not take it. Maeve had written in blue ink below her signature, "For the parents in chairs, not for stages." My father's face changed. "Only a little." "Enough?" "She wrote that because she knew you." I said, "She knew you would see a stage and call it service." His jaw moved. My mother appeared behind him. Her eyes were red, but her makeup had not run. Ingrid Keane would have considered that a basic requirement of dignity. "We gave you everything," she said. "You gave me care and called it debt. How dare you?" "I am not saying you did nothing. I am saying you kept a bill." She looked genuinely wounded by that, which told me she had never heard the math in her own voice. Vivian came last. No white coat now. She had taken it off and folded it over her arm. "I did not know they removed Maeve's name from the final screen," she said. I believed her. Not because Vivian was innocent, because she was too proud to lie badly. "Did you know the script said you created the model?" She looked away. "Vivian?" I knew the language was broad. "That's not an answer." "Yes," she said. I knew. My father turned toward her. "Not now." "No," Vivian said, and there was a crack in her voice I had not heard since we were kids. "Now? You put me on that stage with a speech that made me sound like a thief. I put you on that stage because you have earned recognition. Then why did you need Nora's work to do it?" The coat hallway became very quiet in the practical way hallways do when everyone nearby pretends to be busy. My mother whispered, "Vivian, please." Vivian looked at me. I should have changed the script. It was not an apology. Not yet. It was the first honest sentence she had given me all night. "Yes," I said. "You should have." I left without saying goodbye. Outside, rain spotted the sidewalk. I did not have an umbrella. Carmen found me under the awning and handed me one of the hospital's blue loaners. "You taking the bus?" "Yes." "No, you're not. I parked illegally and I am making it worth the ticket." In the car, neither of us spoke for several minutes. The windshield wipers made a tired rubber sound. My phone buzzed until I turned it off. Carmen finally said, "Maeve used to come to the desk with muffins. The dry ones. She said they built character. I laughed then. One ugly little laugh that turned into crying before I could stop it. Carmen kept driving. She did not tell me it was okay. She did not tell me I had been brave. She just passed me a napkin from the glove box and let me have the quiet. The next morning, St. Brigid sent a corrected notice to every gala attendee. Maeve Keane Family Care Fund restricted gift under compliance review, second tranche pending. Pledges held unprocessed until donor confirmation. My father's name was not on the email. Elise Parks was. By noon, 3 donors had requested calls with compliance. By 3, the board scheduled an emergency meeting. By 5, the local business reporter had left a voicemail on my phone. Because someone at the gala had apparently decided governance failure made better copy than pediatric innovation. I did not call back. Grant told me not to speak to press. Elise told me not to delete anything. Carmen told me to eat. My parents said nothing for 6 days. That was new. Usually, silence in my family was a tactic that required me to chase. This time, I did not chase. On the 7th day, the board met in a conference room on the hospital's 4th floor, not the grand boardroom with the donor wall. A smaller room near administration, with fluorescent lights and a coffee machine that sounded like it was grinding gravel. I was invited for the first 30 minutes, so were Grant, Elise, my father, Peter Wexler, Carmen, and 2 board officers. Vivian was not invited because the review concerned foundation governance, not clinical care. My father looked smaller without a podium. Still well-dressed, still Charles Keane, but smaller. Elise summarized the findings with no adjectives. Restricted gift funds had been charged for branding, event video, donor collateral, and consultant fees not clearly permitted by the agreement. Family support disbursements had decreased by 42% over 8 months while Gala development spending increased. Draft materials misrepresented program origin and fund name. The second transfer had been represented in pledge materials before legal release. No one interrupted her. Then Grant opened Maeve's agreement and read paragraph 4.2 aloud. He did not dramatize it. He did not need to. The board chair, a retired judge named Helen Armitage, folded her hands. Mr. Keane, did you know the fund name was changed in Gala materials? My father adjusted his cuff. I approved a broader campaign concept. That is not my question. He looked at Peter Wexler. Peter looked at the table. Yes, my father said. Did Ms. Nora Keane approve it? She was consulted. I looked at him. Helen Armitage turned to me. Were you consulted? I was handed a transition authorization at brunch and asked to sign it. I refused. Was that before or after Gala materials were finalized? Elise answered, after the judge wrote one note on her pad. Carmen spoke next. She described voucher denials, families redirected to social work waitlists, and the Patel NICU case. Her voice shook twice. She kept going. When it was my turn, I expected to feel angry. I did not. I felt tired in a way that had edges. My grandmother did not give this money so our family could look generous. I said, she gave it because she watched parents sleep in chairs. If St. Brigid wants to raise money for innovation, do that. But do not use her restricted gift as a costume. My father stared at the table. Helen Armitage asked the only question that mattered to me. Miss Keane, under what conditions would you consider signing the second transfer? I had written them down because if I trusted myself to speak from emotion, I would forget something. Restore the original fund name. Reimburse any non-compliant charges from unrestricted foundation dollars. Publish corrected program origin language. Reinstate full family navigator hours. Create a monthly public summary of direct family support spending, and remove my father from authority over this fund. My father lifted his head. Absolutely not. Helen did not look at him. She looked at Grant. Are those conditions consistent with the gift agreement? Grant nodded. Yes. Then they are on the table. I thought my father would argue. He did not. Maybe he understood the room had moved without him. Maybe he was saving his anger for later. The board asked me to step out while they deliberated. I sat in the hallway beside Carmen under a framed photograph of a toddler ringing a brass bell after finishing chemotherapy. Carmen offered me half of a granola bar. This is stale, I said after one bite. Hospital food ecosystem. We ate it anyway. 40 minutes later, Helen Armitage opened the door. The board had voted unanimously to freeze all restricted spending pending reimbursement review. My father would step down as foundation chair for 90 days during the investigation. An interim oversight group would manage the Maeve Keane Family Care Fund. Carmen's navigator hours would be restored immediately. The Gala video would be removed from all channels. Corrected donor notices would go out by close of business. And Vivian, I asked. Helen's expression did not change. Dr. Keane's department chair will receive the corrected record. The hospital will determine whether any professional representation issue exists. That was fair. Not satisfying in the dramatic sense. Fair. My father walked past me without stopping. My mother was waiting by the elevators. I did not know who had called her. She looked from my father to me and understood enough. Nora, she said. I braced for blame. Instead, she asked, did they remove him? Temporarily, her mouth trembled. She pressed her fingertips to it like she could hold the expression in place. Your father built this foundation. Grandma funded this program. You keep saying that like one cancels the other. It doesn't. But one cannot eat the other. She looked exhausted then. Not elegant exhausted, human exhausted. I don't know how to talk to you right now. Then don't yet. The elevator opened. She stepped inside with my father. The doors closed before either of them said anything else. The first article appeared 2 days later in the Portland Business Ledger. St. Bridget Foundation reviews restricted gift after Gala pledge freeze. It did not name me in the headline. Inside, it described a family care fund established by the late Maeve Keane, and questions raised by the donors named Stewart. My father's quote was short. We are cooperating fully with the review. Vivian did not comment. People at work changed around me. Not everyone. Some avoided me because discomfort is easier than ethics. Some were suddenly too friendly because proximity to scandal has its own weather. Dana, my supervisor, closed my office door and apologized. I should have listened when you asked about the invoices. She said, yes. She nodded once. That is fair. I respected that more than if she had made a speech. Carmen became impossible to schedule because families now knew she existed and needed her. The fund paid for 12 motel nights in the first week after the freeze, 2 gas cards, 1 emergency sibling care grant for a mother whose older child had been missing school to sit in the waiting room. Maeve's money started acting like Maeve again. 3 weeks later, Vivian texted me, can we talk somewhere that is not the hospital? I stared at the message for a long time. Vivian and I had never had a relationship that did not include an audience, even if the audience was only imagined. Our parents' expectations sat between us at every table. We met at a diner near Back Cove where the coffee came in thick white mugs and the booths had cracked red vinyl. Vivian arrived in jeans, no white coat, hair pulled into a plain knot. She looked younger without the hospital around her. Tired too. I was put on remediation, she said, for the Gala script, for misrepresentation in foundation materials and failure to correct known inaccuracies. It is not disciplinary yet. More like a warning with paperwork. She said paperwork the way other people say infection. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it partly. Vivian wrapped both hands around her mug. Are you? I am sorry it got this far. I am not sorry it stopped. She nodded as if she had expected that. I read the original family need reports. That surprised me. Why? Elise made them part of the record. I recognized your typing. You used to put 2 spaces after periods because Grandma told you it looked official. I smiled before I could stop myself. She said single spaces were for quitters. Vivian's face softened, then tightened again. I hated those Saturdays, she said. At the hospital? No. The Saturdays Grandma took you. I know that sounds awful. I was in college, then med school, doing everything right, and Grandma talked about your muffin mornings like they were sacred. They were not sacred. They were dry. Vivian gave a small laugh. It did not last. I let Dad make me the face of something I did not build because I wanted one part of the family story that did not feel like a performance I had to keep earning. So you took mine, she flinched. Yes. The waitress refilled our coffee. Neither of us spoke until she left. I am sorry, Vivian said. Not for getting caught. For knowing enough to stop it and choosing not to. That was the first apology in my family that had not asked me to comfort the person giving it. Thank you, I said. I do not know how to be your sister, she admitted. Neither do I. Maybe we start with not lying about each other's work. That seems basic. It would be new for us. We both laughed then, quietly, because the alternative was worse. My father lasted 11 days into his 90-day step-down before resigning from the foundation board entirely. Officially, he said the review had become a distraction from St. Bridget's mission. Unofficially, Helen Armitage told Grant that the board was prepared to remove him if he did not resign. My mother resigned from the Gala committee the same week. The review found $48,000 in expenses that had to be reimbursed to the Maeve Keane Family Care Fund from unrestricted foundation accounts. Not millions, not prison-worthy. Enough to matter, enough to prove the issue had never been my sensitivity. The corrected annual report went out in December. Maeve's name was restored. Carmen's role was listed. The program origin section included one sentence that made me sit down when I read it. The fund's operating model grew from family need records compiled by Maeve Keane and Nora Keane between 2018 and 2021. One sentence, no spotlight, no photograph. It felt larger than applause. I signed the second transfer in January, after Grant confirmed every condition in writing. $1.6 million moved into the fund on a Tuesday morning while I was eating toast over my sink before work. My phone buzzed with the bank notification. I thought I would cry. Instead, I wiped crumbs from the counter and got on the bus. That afternoon, Carmen approved lodging for the Patel family. Their baby had been readmitted for respiratory complications. 3 nights at the motel near the hospital, parking vouchers, meal cards, no video crew, no donor screen, just a confirmation email and a mother who could shower before morning rounds. That was the moment I felt Maeve closest. Not at the gala, not in the board meeting. There, in a receipt for a motel room. If you are still listening, I want to say this carefully. Some families use the language of gratitude to keep you small. They remind you who paid, who drove, who waited in offices, who handled the hard years, and maybe some of that is true. Maybe they did do those things. But care is not supposed to become a chain you drag forever. If someone helped you survive, that does not give them the right to spend the rest of your life defining what you are allowed to become. I had to learn that slowly. I had to learn that a document can protect more than money. Sometimes it protects the version of you that your family keeps editing out. My parents did not apologize quickly. My mother tried first, if you can call it that. She asked me to lunch at the same harbor restaurant where she had tried to get my signature. I almost said no because symmetry can feel like a trap, but I went. She looked different without the foundation calendar running her life. Still elegant, still Ingrid, but quieter. Your father is angry, she said after we ordered. I assumed I am too, sometimes. At me, at everyone. At myself, which is inconvenient. That was the most honest opening she had ever given me. She unfolded a napkin and refolded it. When you were little, I was afraid all the time. Afraid you would not be okay. Afraid people would judge us. Afraid Vivian would resent the attention you needed. I turned that fear into management. You turned it into debt. She closed her eyes for a second. Yes. The waiter set down soup. We waited until he left. I don't know how to undo that, she said. You don't undo it. You stop charging interest. Her face crumpled then. Just a little. Not a performance. A small, private collapse she tried to hide by reaching for her water. I am sorry I called you a charity case. I looked at the white tulip in the vase between us. You did not call me that because you were angry, I said. You called me that because some part of you believed it. She did not deny it. I am working on that, she said. Good. I did not forgive her at lunch. But I did not leave either. My father took longer. Charles Keane did not know how to enter a room without a roll, and he had lost the one he liked best. For months, he sent practical texts through my mother. Tax documents. A medical bill from when I was 17 that had somehow resurfaced. A box of Maeve's old receipts he found in his garage. Then, in April, on a cold Sunday morning, he came to my apartment with the blue binder. Not the copy. The original. I had thought it was still in my storage closet. It was not. He had taken it from Maeve's things after her funeral without telling me. He held it against his chest like a shield. I read it, he said. I stood in the doorway. All of it. Most of the parts I could. He looked older in daylight, not frail, just less arranged. There was a note from my mother in the back. I knew the note Maeve had written it on motel stationery after visiting Theo. Charlie will call this sentiment. It is not. It is logistics with a conscience. My father took a breath that seemed to scrape on the way in. She knew me. Yes, that is not pleasant to discover after your mother is dead. I did not soften it. No. He looked past me into the apartment. Small kitchen, thrift store table, bus schedule on the fridge, one framed photo of Maeve at the hospital cafeteria holding a plastic-wrapped muffin like a trophy. I thought if the fund became larger, more public, it would help more people. Maybe part of you did. He looked at me then, and the other part. Wanted a stage. He nodded once. It cost him something. I am sorry, he said. For the fund. For the gala. For for making your care as a child sound like a loan. I had imagined that apology so many times that the real version felt almost plain. No music, no perfect repair. Just my father standing in a hallway with a binder he should never have taken. "Thank you," I said. "Can I come in?" I thought about it. Then I stepped back. We had coffee at my thrift store table. He did not comment on the cheap mugs. I did not offer comfort beyond the chair. We talked about Maeve's motel, the way she kept spare blankets in the office, the time she drove 3 hours to return a guest's stuffed rabbit because the child would not sleep without it. Before he left, he placed the binder on the table. "This belongs with you." It always did. I know. That was where we started. Not healed. Started. A year after the gala, St. Bridget opened the Maeve Keane family room on the 3rd floor. Not a donor lounge. Not a naming opportunity with marble. A real room for parents. For recliners, lockers, a shower, a microwave, a cabinet with instant oatmeal, phone chargers, laundry cards, and a corkboard with bus schedules. Carmen insisted on the oatmeal. I insisted on the bus schedules. Grant insisted the plaque use the exact fund name. Elise reviewed the spending code before anyone ordered furniture. The plaque was small, Maeve Keane Family Care Fund, for the parents in chairs. Under it, in smaller letters, program records established by Maeve Keane and Nora Keane. My mother came to the opening. She stood in the back and did not try to manage the room. Vivian came too on her lunch break, wearing scrubs. No speech prepared. My father stood beside the coffee urn and looked uncomfortable in a way that was almost healthy. A woman I did not know walked in carrying a hospital blanket around her shoulders. Her son was upstairs after surgery. Carmen showed her the shower, the lockers, the coffee, the phone chargers. The woman touched the back of one recliner and started crying silently. No one photographed her. That mattered. After the opening, Vivian and I walked to the cafeteria. The muffins were still dry. She bought 2 anyway. Grandma had terrible taste in baked goods. She said, "Careful, she will audit you from the afterlife." Vivian smiled, sat by the window overlooking the ambulance bay. She told me about a patient who had drawn a dinosaur on her discharge papers. I told her Carmen wanted to add emergency grocery cards for families discharged late on Fridays. We sounded almost normal. Maybe normal is not something you find. Maybe it is something you practice until it stops feeling like acting. My relationship with my parents is still limited. I see my mother once a month, usually breakfast, public place, no foundation talk unless I bring it up. My father texts before he calls now. He asks if I have capacity for a conversation, which is a phrase he learned from Elise Park during a mediation session and now uses with the stiffness of a man holding a tool he does not fully understand. I appreciate the effort. I do not pretend it erases the floor under my chair by the AV booth. I still work at St. Bridget, but not in donor records. 6 months after the second transfer, I became Family Support Program Coordinator. The salary is not glamorous. The work matters. My desk is upstairs now, near Carmen's, with a window that looks over the parking garage. I keep Maeve's sticky notes in a frame beside my monitor. Stories make people cry. Records make them change rules. Some days are ordinary. A parking voucher, a motel invoice, a mother asking where to wash a bottle, a father needing a bus route printed because his phone died. Those days are not smaller than gala nights. They are the point. People ask if I regret exposing my family in public. The honest answer is that I regret they made public correction necessary. I did not walk into that ballroom wanting spectacle. I walked in with a document my grandmother wrote because she knew love without structure can be stolen by the loudest person in the room. I also know this. If I had signed that paper at brunch, everyone would have praised my maturity. My parents would have called me gracious. Vivian would have thanked me in a speech. Donors would have applauded a fund that no longer did what Maeve built it to do. And 3 months later, another parent would have slept in a chair while my family stood under good lighting. That is what I think about when I doubt myself. Not the headlines, not the whispers, the chair. The first family who used the new room left a note on the corkboard, blue ink, crooked handwriting. "Thank you for giving us somewhere to breathe." I took a photo of it and sent it to Grant, Elise, Carmen, Vivian, and, after a long pause, my father. He replied 10 minutes later. "Your grandmother would have liked that." I typed 3 different answers and deleted them all. Finally, I wrote, "She would have asked why we did not do it sooner." He sent back, "Yes, she would have." That was enough for the day. So that is my story, not a revenge story, really. A record story, a signature story. A story about what happens when the person everyone treats like a charity case turns out to be the one person who read the contract. If you are listening to this and there is a document in your life, literal or not, that says you are allowed to draw a line, I hope you read it carefully. I hope you do not let guilt translate it for you. And I hope you remember that being grateful for care does not require you to surrender your voice. That is the end of my story, but before you go, I want to ask you something. If your family used your name, your work, or your silence to make themselves look generous, would you expose the truth in public or handle it quietly later? Tell me honestly in the comments. I read them. If this story made you feel less alone, subscribe, turn on notifications, and check the story linked in the description. There is another one there about a family table, a missing seat, and the document nobody expected anyone to read.